Hi, I'm Kevin Hager. I'm the Managing Director of Understood at the National Center for Learning Disabilities. I wanted to tell you a little bit today about how we at Understood have really optimized understanding our users, attracting them, and then engaging them into the resources in ways that I think could be really applicable to the work that you all are doing. So I thought we'd break that down into 3 key lessons that we've learned over the last not quite 3 years since we launched Understood. The first lesson is to really deeply understand your users or the people that you serve before you build a thing, whatever that thing is. There were a lot of assumptions out there about the people we serve, which are parents of the 1 in 5 children with learning and attention issues. So a lot of people thought, we understand what parents need, let's just give it to them, a la medicine. What we said is, let's really understand this from the parent perspective so that whatever we create really serves them. So the first thing that we did there, and this is lesson number 1, really understand your users before building something. The first thing we did were focus groups. Across the country, you can do them informally in your own community, but getting together groups of parents and really exploring key issues. For us, it was unpacking the journey. What are the pain points in the journey with your child? What were the highlights? What worked and didn't work? Just kind of open-ended questions that would provoke us to think about how we could serve them better. Along those lines, we also asked a different group of parents to journal for a week. So we asked a few dozen parents, write down everything that happens and everything that you feel when it comes to your child's journey with learning and attention issues. Those journals were invaluable. They helped us to really understand things that maybe we didn't realize parents were going through, particularly the social emotional challenges that many kids with learning and attention issues were facing, that parents had talked to people about but hadn't really surfaced for the field before. So journaling was really, really key. And then what we did were large-scale surveys of our users. So we were able to do a representative sample of 2,200 families who had kids with learning and attention issues. There were really cheap and scrappy ways to do these kinds of surveys online, everything from SurveyMonkey to Qualaroo. But what we did, we were able to test some of those assumptions that we made through the other research and then go a little deeper. So I'll give you an example of some of the questions that were really helpful for us. One is, we asked parents, where are you going right now for information? What are you finding? We also asked parents, how do you talk about these issues? What language is scary or keeping you from taking action, and what language feels safe? For us, that's why we use the phrase learning and attention issues. We tested over 30 different phrases, including learning differences, learning difficulties, learning disabilities, dyslexia as an umbrella term. And what parents told us was, learning and attention issues actually feels right. It's a safe way to kind of enter this landscape. We're quick on Understood to tell parents when they need to use the phrase learning disabilities or the word dyslexia, but that's why we lead with learning and attention issues. We also tested questions like, what features or what functionality could you really use to help you navigate this journey? We tested ideas like, would a personalization approach like Netflix does be helpful for you to navigate content? Would you go to YouTube versus Facebook versus an individual site? But it really helped us to make sure we were talking directly to the users that we serve. The next lesson number 2 for us, was learn from the best out there. Particularly in education, there are so many smart people like yourselves that have spent decades doing this work. Bring them together. We brought nearly 100 of the top experts in the country together to really mine them for, what were the pain points that you see in families? What has helped most? What's the greatest lesson you've learned over your decades in service? Now, we took a really broad approach to experts. So some of them were academic researchers, some were therapists, some were video game designers, government officials, psychologists. We talked to market researchers. We talked to a lot of parents at the beginning of the journey, and parents that were major advocates in this space. Brain researchers, attorneys. I think it's really important to get that broad spectrum, but don't be afraid to ask. I think those experts are very willing to share their expertise. The next thing we did was really look at kind of the best practices out there from those experts. So for instance, when it came to digital engagement, because we knew we wanted to build a digital resource, we said, who's doing this best? Who's attracting users at scale? Who's engaging them deeply, and how are they doing that? So we reached out to everyone from, the people behind letsmove.org to people at Netflix and people at babycenter.com to understand kind of how they created certain tools that we thought were pretty amazing. Lesson number 3 is never stop listening to your users, and I cannot stress this enough. So after we did all that research with users, we built what we would launch 3 years ago as Understood. Every single day, we're doing work to keep listening to our users, to check assumptions and see what might be changing, or what we might have missed, or where we could go deeper. There are some really easy ways to do this. One is that Google Analytics allows you to understand almost in real time how people are using their site, what they're consuming or not consuming, how much time they're spending on each page. It's a really wonderful tool. We also built in a button on every page of content that asks, was this helpful, yes or no? We actually see a pretty large number of parents tell us, yes it was, or no it wasn't. And when they say no, a box pops up and asks them, why wasn't it helpful? So we're constantly looking at that. We look at every piece of over 3,000 pieces of content to see what's falling below, 85 or 90% of approval rating, and then how we can make that better, what users are telling us. We also constantly run surveys on the site. So we're asking users everything from where they're at on the journey to how they've just enjoyed the piece of content or the expert event that they consumed, how we can make it better. We're doing that every single day. There's also a great tool called usertesting.com. It's very cheap, and what it allows you to do is really take an idea that you've either launched or are about to and put it in front of a number of users. You pick the demographics, you pick the qualifications, and really within less than an hour, you can get that in front of a bunch of users on the internet who will then walk through that tool or that piece of content, tell you what they think, you hear their audio as they're kind of scrolling through it, and you're able to, again, really test assumptions and go deeper with parents. So whether it is the way that we're going to reshape our expert events, or we're thinking about a new template to serve up content, we can put it in front of a few dozen parents and say, what do you think? Is this easier than the first way we did it? Is it more complicated? It's kind of a gut check because, you tend to get inside of your work day to day, but really, really helpful. The other thing I highly recommend is A/B testing whenever possible. So we do this really across the board, whether it's, an email subject line, copy in an email, or a new button on the website, or, a new a photo that we might be unsure of. Internet functionality allows you to really test two things against each other. So half of your users are seeing one, half are seeing another. And I can't tell you the number of times we've been pretty sure they were going to like one approach, and in fact, a significant portion like a different approach. Again, it's just a way of really testing assumptions and making sure you're hearing from your users what's best for them. And then I would say along those lines, don't be afraid to constantly ask, how are we doing? We run a large national ad campaign, and every month we do a survey to people that have seen that campaign and those that haven't. And we're asking them, are they more likely to talk to their child's teacher about learning and attention issues or not? Are they more likely to talk to a pediatrician, another parent? Are they more likely to assume their child might have learning or attention issues? We want to make sure we're staying on top of that because the whole point is to break down stigma and make it easier for these parents to get the resources that they need. We are also constantly asking our users how we're doing. We just did a survey of 1,000 users and said, in what ways, if any, has Understood helped you be less stressed? Are you more or less confident as a result of using Understood? How is your child doing in school since you started using Understood? So again, there's so much cheap, easy functionality out there to help you really stay connected to your users. or the people that you serve, I highly recommend that you embrace it. So just to kind of recap, lesson number 1 is really understand the people that you serve before you build a thing. Lesson number 2 is really ask important questions of the top people in your field. And lesson number 3 is never stop engaging with your users to be even better. Keep learning from them every day. I hope this was helpful. Please feel free to reach out to us if there's any other lessons we can share about the brief history of Understood. Like I said, we've been around just under 3 years now. But I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for having me.